Hey folks, I did a video on how to extend a power station by just adding another battery and not using the proprietary super expensive batteries that these companies make. On that video, the most frequently asked question in the comments was how to charge that battery once you actually drained it. What do you do then? Well, I'll be honest with you. When I first saw the question, I thought, well, you put a battery charger on it, right? But then somebody pointed out that they're not asking me how to charge that battery if you've got a grid connection. What they're asking is, how do you charge that battery when you're off grid and you're using that power system to power something? Maybe the power's gone out and you've added a battery to your power station so you could run your refrigerator until the power comes back on. Maybe you're talking about a situation where you lost power, the power's gone out, we've got that big hurricane that hit back east and really devastated North Carolina. So what if somebody had a power station and they hooked a battery up to it the way I said, and they drained that battery down running their refrigerator and their freezer, just trying to keep their food fresh and, well, maybe running a few lights. What do you do now? Well, that, folks, is a good question, because if you don't have power, how are you going to charge that battery up? Well, I'll tell you how. First, there are actually a few different ways to do that. And I'm going to give you what I think is the best way, and I'll give you a couple other ways on top of that. So first, the best way, in my mind, is to have a small charge controller that can handle that battery's voltage and amperage and charge you up off a solar panel. I recently made a suggestion to a friend of mine, Michael Wilson, over at Wilson Forest Lands, to use a Victron charge controller that I pointed to him on Amazon, and I will drop a link down below for you. Victron makes very good quality stuff, so I have no problem suggesting you use that. Now, you could use a Morningstar charge controller. You could even use this old Xantrex. So there are lots of options. So you take that charge controller, connect it up to your portable solar panels, connect that straight to the battery, and you could charge that battery up. Now, would I leave the battery connected to the power station? Well, no, I wouldn't, because the power station is going to try to draw all the time. If that battery's hooked up, it thinks it's got solar coming in, it's going to try to draw off it. You're better off disconnecting it, let everything run on the power station itself, charge that battery up, then plug in the power station, charge it up, and eventually then plug the battery in again to use it until you wear it out. Now, personally, I probably wouldn't drain that 24-volt battery all the way. I actually did this weekend. I ran for about 8.5 hours, pulling between 300 and 350 watts for 2 crock pots with chili in them because we were out four-wheeling all day. So I set my 24-volt battery up to my AFERIY power station, just like in that video, and I ran it all day, and I drained that battery all the way down to 0. Now, how am I charging it up? Well, that's number 2. So number 1, solar panel, charge controller, battery, away you go. You should fuse that, as somebody mentioned in a comment in that video, and I would agree. It's best to provide a fuse. Now, the next way you could do it, which isn't the most efficient way, but I was testing this and it does work. If you have a LiFePO4 battery charger, which I happen to have, and you want to use that to charge up your battery, but you don't have utility power, what you can do, and this is crazy, I know, and it's not the most efficient way, but folks, it will work. You plug that solar panel into your power station on the power station port for solar, and hopefully you've got enough to do this, at least 200 watts, but frankly, 400 or 500 would be better. Plug it into your power station, then turn on your power station's inverter, plug in your 120-volt charger to allow it to go ahead and charge that battery up. Well, the battery's not plugged in anymore, of course, right? Now, when I just did that, I started out, I was pulling about 55 watts. So if I had a 200-watt solar panel, which actually I do, and I had it plugged into my power station, and it were providing 200 watts, which we all know it won't, more like 150. But if it was providing that, and I'm only drawing 55 watts off of it, well, it's perfectly fine. You will actually be charging both the battery and the power station up. Now, personally, I would probably put all the power into the power station first, get it to 100%, then plug in my battery charger to the power station, because then it's going to pull that power off the solar panel and go straight to your inverter and charge up that battery for you. Now, the charger that I have gives a maximum of about 5 amps, which is 124, 125 watts of charging. So as long as that solar panel is providing more than that 125 watts, then you're fine. You could charge that up. Now, let's be honest, that's a 2,560 watt hour battery. So if I could give it 256 watts, it would take me 10 hours to charge it from fully empty. You're not going to get 10 hours of solar to do that with. You could figure 4, depending on the time of year, right? Depending on where you are in the world. If I'm up north in the summertime, I could get 8 or 10. If I'm up north in the wintertime, I'm lucky to get 2. So the more solar you have, the better. If, for example, you have a power station that can take, say, 500 watts. Now you're talking a little bit better. Still, you'd have to have a battery charger that could at least give you that 250 plus watts, and you're still talking 10 hours. So, and I'm going to be honest with you, folks. It doesn't matter if you're using a proprietary battery or if you're using a battery like I'm suggesting. It's still going to take you that long. Watt hours are watt hours. If you have 10,000 watt hours or 10 kilowatt hours of battery power, and you can charge it with 1,000 watts, well, guess what? That's 10 hours of pure good sun to do that in. So if you've got 2,500 watts, well, then you could do it in 4 hours. Well, it's no different for something like this. If I've got 4,600 watt hours of reserve battery power between my auxiliary battery and my main unit, then to charge that up, if I've drained it all, it's going to take a long time. At 460 watts, it's going to take me 10 hours to charge that up. So I'm going to need 3 times that in order to reduce that down to what I would call a viable charging window. So just to answer that question, yes, you could put a solar panel and charge controller on the battery. That to me is the most efficient way to recharge it. But you're going to need, if this is something you want to do, you're going to need enough solar to get that battery charged up within a window of time. The sun is going to hit the panel strong enough that you get enough power that you can start charging those batteries up. Now where I am right now, by 10 a.m., I've got plenty of solar and I've got it at least till 2 in the afternoon. That's a nice 4-hour window and I can get some trickle charging later, but I've only got about a 4-hour window. So if I want to charge up essentially 2,600 watt hours, 2,560 technically, but let's just round it up to 26, and I need to do that in 4 hours, well then I got to divide 26 by 4, which is about 650 watts of solar charging in order to get that battery from 0 to 100% in 4 hours. That's going to require about a 1,000 watt solar array. So you can add a battery to your power station and give it that extra 2,560 watt hours, which is what I did this weekend. But you need to understand it's going to take a long time to charge that back up again. Now, all of these systems like the Anchor Solix, the Bluetti, all of those, they generally figure that you're going to plug that in, use it to run your house during an outage for a day or so, maybe a day and a half or 2, and then you're going to charge it back up when the power comes back on. So this isn't a solution for a situation where, like we have out in North Carolina, where everybody's out of power, and they're going to be out of power for months. It's not going to work for you. Not unless you've got a big solar array to charge everything back up, and you can do that. Now, I mentioned that there were 3 ways. Well, of course, the third way would be via a generator. So if you've got a generator, but you don't want to run it 24/7, 365, you could fire up your generator with a powerful enough charger to charge up that battery and the power station at the same time while running whatever it is you wanted to run. So you plug your power station into the generator, you disconnect the battery from the power station, and you plug in a charger on your battery to charge it up. Now, I don't happen to have a generator here to demonstrate that for you, but I think it's pretty simple. Generator plugged into the power supply, as well as a battery charger plugged into the generator. So number 1, solar panel, charge controller, of course associated fuses, and just plug it into the battery. Number 2, you could run your solar panel into your power station and run a charger off the power station to charge the battery. Just be aware that it needs to be less watts coming out of the power station than are coming in from the solar panel, or you're going to deplete your power station while trying to charge your battery. So that doesn't work very well. And again, I'm not saying that's the most efficient. And then of course there is running a generator with a battery charger to just charge it back up. Couple hours, get her charged back up, and away you go. Now in my particular case, I ran about 8.5 hours with those crock pots running. Now that was a lot of power. That was more power than my refrigerator at my cabin uses. In fact, it was more than double. Now they say refrigerators use around 300 watts. Mine typically runs about 150 when it kicks on and cools down again. That's what it does. But if you've got a bigger one that uses 300 watts, that 2560 watt hour battery is going to give you about 8 hours. If you've got a similar size battery in your power station, well, now you've got closer to 16 hours. That's not 24 hours. But if you took another one of those batteries and ran it parallel to the first, it gives you another 8 hours. You're now at 24 hours approximately. But again, you're going to need to run your generator. If it were me, what I would do is I'd run my generator in the morning for a couple hours, saves fuel. I'd run it for a couple hours in the evening. Just keep things going so that I've got a 12-hour window. If I start at 8 a.m. and I charge up my battery and my power station, I got to run for 12 hours, which I can do with this setup, before I need a couple hours to charge everything back up again. And all I need is a generator that can put out at least about 2,400 watts. That's it. Now, of course, you're going to need a charger that can charge it up off that generator pretty fast. So you're going to need something that can put out a lot of amps. I've got a 24-volt battery charger that will charge at 29 volts and put out about 1,000 to 1,200 watts. So I could plug that in, absolutely do that. But you better have a big enough inverter that you could run that 1,000-watt charger at the same time that you're running your refrigerators or whatever else. And you'd have to have more than 1,000 watts of solar. From an efficiency standpoint, I think solar panel number 1, generator number 2, and charging off the power station with a solar panel hooked up, absolute last place, not very efficient, but could actually work if you had enough solar to do it and enough sun that would last long enough. Best case, honestly, in my opinion, is a combination of 2 of those. So in my opinion, the best option is the generator and the solar. Let's say you've got 500 watts of solar and you're drawing about 300 watts, then as long as the sun's hitting that panel, you're probably going to be able to hold things at a steady pace. And you can extend that period of time that battery and your power station are going to be able to power whatever it is you want, and you'll be able to reduce the amount of charging off of your generator that you have to do. So if you can spend a couple hours making sure everything's fully charged in the morning, and you've got enough solar throughout the day to keep everything running off solar and your battery and your power station charged up, then you may not have to run your generator again until the next morning, essentially giving you 24 hours. So that would be my recommendation. I hope that makes sense. I hope that helped somebody out. Drop your comments down below. Let me know what you think. You think I'm crazy?